Hey everyone, hope you're doing well, and I'm so glad you've decided to join us again. Tonight we are exploring how medieval students took notes without paper. So before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you genuinely enjoy our nighttime stories, let me know in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always so fascinating to see who's joining us from around the globe. Now it's time to dim the lights and relax as we start our story. In the stone halls of medieval universities, where morning light filtered through narrow windows and cast long shadows across worn floors, students arrived each day carrying bundles that would seem strange to modern eyes. These bundles contained not books or notebooks as we might expect, but rather collections of wooden tablets, each one carefully prepared and maintained according to traditions that stretched back centuries through the scholarly communities of Europe. The tablets themselves were crafted from specific types of wood, most commonly beech or oak, though regional preferences varied according to what grew abundantly in each area. In the northern regions, birch was sometimes used, while southern universities often favored chestnut when it could be obtained. Each tablet measured roughly 8 inches by 6 inches, though some students preferred smaller versions that could be more easily carried, while others chose larger surfaces that allowed for more extensive note-taking during particularly lengthy lectures on theology or natural philosophy. The surface of each tablet was prepared through a process that required both patience and skill. First, the wood was smoothed using progressively finer grades of sandstone, beginning with coarse stones that removed the major irregularities, and gradually moving to stones so fine they left the surface almost silky to the touch. This preparation could take an entire afternoon for a single tablet, and students often spent their Sunday evenings in communal preparation sessions, sharing stones and techniques while discussing the week's lessons. Once smoothed, the wooden surface received a coating of beeswax mixed with various additives depending on local customs and availability. In Paris, students typically mixed their beeswax with a small amount of charcoal dust, which gave the surface a slightly grey appearance and made the writing more visible. Students in Bologna preferred to mix their wax with finely ground chalk, creating a pale, almost luminous surface that worked well in the dim light of lecture halls. The process of applying the wax required heating it gently over small braziers until it reached the proper consistency, then spreading it evenly across the wooden surface using broad, flat implements carved from bone or wood. The wax needed to be exactly the right thickness, neither so thin that the stylus would scrape against the wood beneath, nor so thick that the letters would blur together, or the surface would become too soft to hold clear impressions. Experienced students could judge this thickness by touch, running their fingers lightly across the cooled surface and feeling for the subtle resistance that indicated proper preparation. New students often struggled with this aspect, creating tablets that were either too hard to write upon or too soft to maintain legible text throughout a long day of lectures. The stylus itself was perhaps the most personal of all the students' tools, often carved by the student's own hand from materials that held significance or simply felt comfortable during long writing sessions. Most styluses were fashioned from bronze or iron, though students from wealthy families sometimes carried styluses made from silver or even gold. The writing end was shaped to a fine point, sharp enough to make clear impressions in the wax but not so sharp as to tear through the surface entirely. The opposite end was flattened and widened, forming what scribes called the spatula, used for smoothing out mistakes or entire sections that needed to be rewritten. The balance of a good stylus was crucial to comfortable writing. Too heavy, and the hand would tire quickly during lengthy lectures that might continue for several hours without pause. Too light, and the student would need to press harder to make clear impressions, again leading to fatigue, and sometimes to tablets that became marked with unintended scratches and gouges. Many students spent considerable time adjusting their styluses, filing and polishing until the weight and balance felt exactly right. During lectures, students would arrange their tablets in careful order, typically beginning with the first tablet position to catch the best available light. As each tablet filled with notes, it would be moved to a different position and replaced with a fresh one. The process of managing multiple tablets required a kind of quiet choreography, as students worked to avoid the scratching and tapping sounds that might disturb their neighbors or, worse still, draw the attention and disapproval of the lecturer. The act of writing itself followed patterns that had been refined over generations of scholarly practice. Students learned to write in dense abbreviated scripts that maximized the use of available space while remaining legible enough to be useful for later study. Common words and phrases were reduced to single letters or simple symbols, creating a kind of shorthand that allowed rapid note-taking but required careful attention to ensure that the abbreviations would still be comprehensible hours or days later. When mistakes occurred, as they inevitably did during rapid note-taking, students would use the flat end of their stylus to smooth out the error, gently warming the wax if necessary to make it more pliable. The process had to be done carefully to avoid creating a depression in the surface that would interfere with future writing. Experienced students developed techniques for making partial corrections, smoothing out individual letters while leaving surrounding text intact. At the end of each day, students faced the choice of preserving their notes or preparing their tablets for reuse. Those tablets containing particularly important information might be set aside, kept in wooden boxes or wrapped in cloth to protect the wax surface from damage. Other tablets would be completely smooth clean, their surfaces warmed gently over small flames until the wax became soft enough to be leveled with wooden tools, preparing them for the next day's lectures. The process of cleaning and preparing tablets became a meditative routine for many students, a quiet activity that marked the transition from the active learning of the day to the contemplative study of the evening. Some students preferred to clean their tablets immediately after each lecture, while others would accumulate several days' worth of tablets before undertaking the cleaning process in a single session. Storage of tablets required considerable attention to environmental conditions. Wax became brittle in cold temperatures and soft in warm ones, so students learned to keep their tablets in locations where temperature remained relatively stable. Many students constructed special wooden boxes with fitted compartments that held each tablet securely without allowing them to rub against one another. These boxes often became quite elaborate, with carved decorations and fitted lids that protected the contents from dust and moisture. The seasonal variations in temperature created ongoing challenges for tablet maintenance. During winter months, tablets might become so hard that styluses would slip across the surface without making proper impressions. Students developed techniques for gently warming their tablets before use, sometimes carrying them close to their bodies under heavy robes, or placing them near braziers for carefully timed intervals. Summer heat presented the opposite problem, as tablets could become so soft that letters would blur together, or entire sections of notes might be accidentally erased by the pressure of resting hands. Regional differences in tablet preparation and use created ongoing discussions among students who traveled between universities. Students arriving in Paris from Oxford might find that their tablet preparation techniques, perfectly adequate in the English climate, produced surfaces that were too hard or too soft for the different conditions in France. These differences led to extensive sharing of knowledge about local materials, preparation techniques, and maintenance procedures. The economics of tablet use influenced every aspect of student life. Wax was not inexpensive, and students from modest backgrounds often had to choose between purchasing sufficient wax for proper tablet preparation or spending their limited funds on other necessities. Some students formed cooperatives, sharing the costs of materials and labor involved in tablet preparation. Others sought employment with established scholars, exchanging work in maintaining tablet supplies for access to materials and instruction in proper preparation techniques. Wealthy students might own dozens of tablets, allowing them to preserve notes from multiple subjects without the need for frequent cleaning and reuse. These students often hired younger students or local craftsmen to maintain their tablet supplies, ensuring that they always had properly prepared surfaces available for note-taking. The sight of a student arriving at lectures with numerous tablets was a clear indication of family wealth and social status. The guild regulations governing tablet preparation varied considerably between different university towns. In some locations, only licensed craftsmen were permitted to prepare tablets for student use, leading to standardized products but higher costs. Other cities allowed students to prepare their own materials, resulting in greater variation in quality but more affordable supplies. These regulatory differences sometimes influence students' choices about where to pursue their studies. The physical demands of tablet writing affected students' daily routines in ways that extended far beyond the lecture halls themselves. The pressure required to make clear impressions in wax was considerably greater than that needed for writing with ink on parchment, leading to hand and wrist fatigue that required careful management. Students developed exercises and stretching routines designed to maintain flexibility and strength in their writing hands. The posture required for effective tablet writing also differed from other forms of writing. The need to press firmly while maintaining precise control over letter formation led students to adopt specific seating positions and hand positions that distributed the physical stress of writing across larger muscle groups. These techniques were passed down through informal apprenticeships, as older students shared their experience with newcomers. The social aspects of tablet maintenance created communities within the larger university populations. Students would gather in common areas during evening hours, working together to clean and prepare tablets while discussing the day's lectures and sharing techniques for improving their note-taking efficiency. These informal gatherings served multiple purposes, providing not only practical assistance with tablet maintenance but also opportunities for collaborative study and social connection. The rhythm of tablet preparation became deeply embedded in the daily and weekly routines of medieval student life. Sunday afternoons were commonly devoted to tablet maintenance, as students prepared their supplies for the coming week's lectures. The repetitive motions of smoothing wax and adjusting styluses created a meditative quality that many students found conducive to reflection on their studies and preparation for upcoming examinations. Advanced students often developed highly personal systems for organizing and maintaining their tablet collections. Some created elaborate coding systems using different colored waxes or small marks to indicate subject matter or importance level. Others developed techniques for partial erasure, preserving key concepts while making space for new material. These personal systems were carefully guarded secrets, as effective note-taking techniques could provide significant advantages in academic competition. The transition from tablet notes to permanent records presented ongoing challenges that required careful planning and considerable additional work. Important information needed to be transferred to parchment or paper while it remained legible on the tablet surface. This transfer process required access to writing materials that were often more expensive than the tablets themselves, as well as sufficient time to complete the copying process before the original notes were lost to tablet reuse. Students developed various strategies for managing this transition, ranging from immediate copying of the most crucial information to elaborate systems for prioritizing which notes deserved permanent preservation. Some students created abbreviated permanent records that captured only the essential points from their tablet notes, while others attempted to preserve complete transcriptions of particularly important lectures. The collaborative aspects of note-taking created complex social dynamics within student communities. Students with particularly effective note-taking skills often found themselves in high demand among their peers, who sought access to comprehensive and accurate records of lectures they might have missed or understood incompletely. These relationships sometimes developed into formal arrangements, with students specializing in note-taking for specific subjects in exchange for assistance with other academic activities. The quality and completeness of tablet notes became a form of social currency within university communities. Students who consistently produced clear, comprehensive notes gained reputations that enhanced their standing among both peers and instructors. Conversely, students whose notes were consistently incomplete or illegible might find themselves excluded from study groups and other collaborative academic activities. As the afternoon light began to fade in the stone corridors, students would carefully gather their tablets, checking each surface for any damage that might require attention before the next day's use. The process of collecting and organizing tablets had its own rhythm, with each student following personal routines developed through months or years of daily practice. Some students preferred to clean each tablet immediately after use, while others would accumulate several before undertaking the maintenance process in a single extended session. The evening maintenance rituals varied considerably among different student populations, but certain patterns emerged across most university communities. Students would typically begin by examining each tablet surface under the best available light, checking for hairline cracks in the wax that might indicate the need for complete resurfacing. These tiny fissures could develop gradually over repeated use, particularly during periods of temperature fluctuation, and early detection allowed for repairs that could extend the useful life of a tablet considerably. The repair process for damaged tablets required patience and skill that developed only through extensive practice. Small cracks could often be sealed by gently warming the affected area and using a bone tool to press the wax back together, but larger damage might require partial or complete resurfacing. Students learned to judge which repairs were worth attempting, and which tablets had reached the end of their useful life and needed to be completely refinished. The tools used for tablet maintenance were often handmade by the students themselves, carved from materials that were readily available, and suited to the specific tasks involved. Bone tools were particularly favored for wax work, as bone held just the right combination of hardness and smoothness to manipulate wax without scratching or tearing. Many students spent considerable time shaping and polishing their bone tools, creating implements that were perfectly suited to their individual working styles and preferences. The seasonal cycle of tablet maintenance created distinct rhythms in student life that synchronized with the academic calendar. During the intense period before examinations, tablets might be used continuously for days without cleaning, as students struggled to preserve every piece of potentially useful information. Following examinations, there would typically be an extended period devoted to tablet maintenance, as students cleaned accumulated materials and prepared fresh supplies for the next academic period. The communal aspects of tablet preparation extended beyond simple practical cooperation to include the sharing of specialized knowledge about materials and techniques. Students from different regions would contribute information about local variations in wax preparation, wood selection, and stylus crafting that had been developed in their home areas. This exchange of technical knowledge created informal networks of expertise that spread innovations and improvements throughout the university system. Master craftsmen who specialized in student supplies often maintained workshops near university centers, providing not only finished products but also instruction in proper maintenance techniques. These workshops became gathering places where students could access specialized tools and materials that were too expensive for individual ownership, while also learning advanced techniques from experienced practitioners. The relationship between student and craftsman often extended over many years, as successful techniques were refined and passed down through generations of scholars. The economic impact of tablet maintenance extended into local communities surrounding universities, creating markets for specialized materials and services. Local farmers might specialize in raising bees whose wax was particularly suited to tablet preparation, while woodworkers developed expertise in selecting and preparing the specific types of wood that worked best for student needs. These economic relationships created complex networks of supply and demand that influenced everything from agricultural practices to trade relationships between different regions. The preservation of particularly valuable notes created additional layers of complexity in tablet management. Students might maintain separate collections of tablets that were reserved for the most important information, using higher quality materials and more careful preparation techniques to ensure longevity. These special tablets might be stored in climate-controlled environments, wrapped in specially treated cloths, or kept in sealed containers that protected them from environmental fluctuations. The process of transferring information from tablets to permanent storage required careful timing and planning. Students needed to balance the desire to preserve important information against the practical need to reuse their limited supplies of tablets. This balance created ongoing tension in student life, as the decision about what information deserved permanent preservation had significant implications for both immediate studies and long-term academic success. Advanced students often developed sophisticated systems for managing information flow between tablets and permanent records. Some created detailed indexes that allowed them to locate specific information across multiple tablets, while others developed coding systems that indicated priority levels for different types of content. These organizational systems required considerable maintenance and updating, but they provided significant advantages in academic efficiency and effectiveness.
The collaborative copying of notes created complex social and economic relationships within student communities. Students with particularly neat handwriting or comprehensive note-taking skills might earn income by creating permanent copies of tablet notes for their peers. These copying services required not only technical skill but also access to expensive materials like parchment and ink, making them significant economic undertakings that could influence a student's financial situation considerably. The verification and accuracy of copied notes became matters of significant concern, as errors introduced during the copying process could have serious academic consequences. Students developed various techniques for checking copied work, including collaborative proofreading sessions and systematic comparison procedures that helped ensure the accuracy of permanent records. The physical storage of tablets during periods of non-use required careful attention to environmental conditions and security considerations. Students needed to protect their tablets from theft, as replacement costs could be significant, while also ensuring that storage conditions would preserve the quality of prepared surfaces. Many students invested considerable time and resources in constructing storage systems that balance these competing requirements. The social hierarchy within student communities was often reflected in the quality and quantity of tablet supplies that different students could afford to maintain. Wealthy students might own extensive collections of tablets prepared with the finest materials, while students from modest backgrounds might need to make do with smaller numbers of tablets prepared with less expensive substitutes. These differences in material resources could influence academic performance and social relationships in significant ways. The regional variations in tablet preparation techniques created opportunities for students to develop expertise that could be valuable in different university communities. A student who had mastered the tablet preparation techniques used in one region might find that knowledge highly valued when traveling to study in a different area. This portability of technical knowledge created incentives for students to master multiple preparation techniques and to maintain awareness of developments in different scholarly communities. The integration of tablet use with other aspects of medieval student life required careful coordination and planning. Students needed to balance the time required for tablet maintenance with other academic and personal responsibilities, while also ensuring that their note-taking supplies were always adequate for upcoming educational demands. This integration became a crucial aspect of successful student life that required both practical skills and strategic thinking. The development of personal tablet maintenance routines became deeply embedded in individual student identities and academic practices. Each student gradually developed preferred techniques, timing and organizational systems that reflected both practical considerations and personal preferences. These individual approaches to tablet management became as distinctive as handwriting styles, creating unique signatures that experienced observers could recognize across different academic contexts. The quiet sounds of evening tablet maintenance, the gentle scraping of tools against wax, the soft tapping as tablets were arranged in storage boxes, and the whispered conversations as students shared techniques and materials, all combined to create a peaceful atmosphere that marked the conclusion of each day's scholarly activities. Students would carefully check each tablet one final time, ensuring that surfaces were properly cleaned and prepared, that storage arrangements would protect their materials through the night, and that everything would be ready for another day of learning in the ancient halls of medieval universities across Europe.
The odd job of warming beds for strangers in 1750. The profession of bed warming emerged from the practical necessities of 18th century domestic life, when the comfort of strangers became a matter of careful preparation and measured routine. In the winter months of 1750, when frost gathered thick upon window panes and coal fires struggled against the penetrating cold, the task of preparing a warm bed for travelers and guests required both skill and dedication that developed through years of quiet practice. The bed warmer herself would begin her evening preparations as daylight faded, moving through the corridors of inns and private households, with her collection of warming pans, each one crafted from polished brass or copper, fitted with long wooden handles worn smooth by countless hands that had grasped them through decades of service. These pans, when filled with glowing coals from the hearth, would be slipped between the linen sheets and woolen blankets, moved in slow, methodical patterns to distribute heat evenly throughout the bedding, in a process that required both patience and precise timing. The process began with the selection of coals, choosing pieces that burned steadily without excessive flame or smoke that might permeate the bedding with unpleasant odors. The bed warmer would use small iron tongs to place these coals carefully into the warming pan, ensuring they were neither too hot nor too cool, testing their temperature by holding her hand at a measured distance above the metal surface, while counting silently to gauge the intensity of heat. The rhythm of this work followed patterns established through years of practice, each movement deliberate and unhurried, creating a meditation of sorts in the quiet preparation of comfort for others. Moving from room to room, she would enter each chamber quietly, often while the intended occupant was still dining below, or attending to evening business in the common areas of the establishment. The warming pan would be inserted beneath the covers at the foot of the bed first, then drawn slowly upward toward the pillows, pausing at intervals to allow the metal to transfer its heat to the fabric in a gradual process that could not be rushed without creating uneven distribution. The technique required patience and understanding of how heat moved through different materials, as rushing would create uneven warm spots, or worse, scorch the precious linens that represented significant household investment and took months to replace if damaged. The bedding itself consisted of multiple layers, each serving a specific purpose in the warming process and requiring individual attention from the bed warmer's practiced hand. The bottom sheet, typically made of sturdy linen woven from flax grown in local fields, would be stretched taut across the straw or feather mattress, its surface providing the foundation for all subsequent layers. Above this lay the sleeping sheet, often of finer weave and softer texture, which would come into direct contact with the person's body during the night hours. Woolen blankets followed, sometimes 2 or 3 layers depending on the severity of the cold and the preferences of the household, and finally a coverlet or counterpane that served both practical and decorative purposes, while adding another barrier against the winter chill. Each layer required individual attention with the warming pan, demanding a systematic approach that ensured no area was neglected in the process. The bed warmer would lift each covering carefully, sliding the pan beneath and allowing it to rest for several minutes before moving to the next section, creating a pattern of warmth that would gradually permeate through all the layers. The process created a gentle warmth that would gradually permeate through all the layers, creating a cocoon of comfort that would last through the early hours of sleep when the body's natural temperature dropped and external warmth became most essential for restful slumber. The brass warming pans used in this work were often family heirlooms or tools of the trade passed down through generations of domestic workers, their surfaces bearing the accumulated history of countless evenings spent in service to others' comfort. Their surfaces, polished to a soft gleam that reflected candlelight in the dim chambers, bore the marks of constant use, mold dents from being set down on stone floors, scratches from the iron tools used to tend the coals, and the deep patina that came from years of handling by skilled hands. The wooden handles, usually made from ash or oak selected for their strength and resistance to heat, were shaped to fit comfortably in the palm while providing enough length to keep the user's hand safely away from the heated metal surface. The coals themselves came from the main household fires, carefully selected for their burning properties and freedom from impurities that might create excessive smoke or unpleasant odors. Hardwood charcoal was preferred when available, as it provided steady heat without the sulfurous smell of mineral coal or the rapid burning characteristics of softwood that required constant attention and frequent replacement. The bed warmer learned to judge the readiness of coals by their color and the way they glowed in the darkness of the pan, knowing exactly when they would provide optimal warmth without risk of igniting the bedding or creating uncomfortable hot spots that might disturb sleep. In larger establishments, such as coaching inns that served travelers along major routes or wealthy merchant houses that frequently entertained guests from distant cities, the bed warming duties might occupy several women working in coordination throughout the evening hours. They would move through the building in a careful sequence, timing their work so that each bed reached peak warmth just as its intended occupant prepared to retire for the night. This required intimate knowledge of household routines, understanding which guests preferred early retirement and which might sit by the fire until late evening hours discussing business or sharing news from their travels. The technique of operating the warming pan involved a gentle sliding motion, never dragging or pushing too forcefully against the bedding that might disturb the careful arrangement of layers or create wrinkles that would prove uncomfortable during sleep. The metal bottom of the pan needed to maintain contact with the fabric long enough to transfer heat effectively, but not so long as to create dangerous hot spots that might scorch the material or become uncomfortably warm for the eventual occupant. Experienced bed warmers developed an intuitive sense for this timing, counting silently or humming quiet songs to measure the appropriate intervals while moving the pan in smooth overlapping patterns. Different types of bedding required different approaches based on their material properties and construction methods. Fine linen sheets, prized for their smoothness and durability but expensive to replace, needed gentle handling to avoid snags from rough edges on the warming pan or excessive heat that might weaken the delicate fibers. Coarser homespun sheets, woven from local flax or hemp, could withstand more robust treatment, but still required care to ensure even heating throughout their surface area. Wool blankets, with their natural ability to trap and hold warmth while providing insulation against cold air, responded well to thorough warming, but needed attention to prevent the creation of excessively hot areas that might become uncomfortable during the long hours of sleep. The seasonal variations in this work created different challenges throughout the year, requiring adaptation of techniques and timing to match changing conditions. During the harshest winter months, when frost formed on the inside of windows and water froze in washing basins overnight, the bed warming process might need to be repeated twice in an evening, once to initially warm the bed during the dinner hour, and again just before the occupant's arrival to ensure optimal comfort. In milder weather of early winter or late autumn, a single warming might suffice, though the bed warmer needed to judge carefully based on the temperature of the room, the thickness of the bedding, and the particular needs or preferences of the individual who would occupy the bed. Regional differences in bed warming practices reflected local customs, available materials and the particular challenges posed by different climates and fuel sources. In areas where peat was the primary fuel source, the warming pans might be filled with glowing peat embers, which burned longer but at lower temperatures than wood coals, requiring adjustment of technique and timing. Coastal regions sometimes used heated stones wrapped in cloth as an alternative to metal warming pans, particularly in households where brass or copper implements were scarce or too costly for regular use. Mountain communities might employ heated bricks that retained warmth longer than coals but required different handling methods. The social aspects of bed warming created interesting dynamics within household hierarchies, as the bed warmers' work bridged the gap between the visible hospitality offered to guests and the invisible labor that made such comfort possible. The bed warmer often worked invisibly, completing her tasks while the household's attention was focused elsewhere on entertainment, dining, or business discussions. Yet her work was essential to the comfort and by extension the social standing of the establishment in an era when hospitality was a measure of respectability. A poorly warmed bed could reflect badly on the entire household's reputation for excellent service, while properly executed bed warming contributed to the establishment's standing in the community and its ability to attract and retain guests. Training for this profession typically occurred through observation and gradual assumption of responsibility under the guidance of experienced practitioners who understood both the technical and social aspects of the work. Young women entering domestic service might begin by assisting with the coal selection or carrying warming pans between rooms, gradually learning the techniques through daily practice and careful observation of their supervisor's methods. The work required understanding not only the mechanical aspects of operating the warming pan safely and effectively, but also the social nuances of household timing, guest expectations, and the coordination required with other domestic staff members. The economic aspects of bed warming reflected the broader patterns of domestic labor in the 18th century, where specialized skills commanded different levels of compensation and recognition. In some households, bed warming was one responsibility among many for general domestic workers whose duties might include cleaning, laundry, food preparation and other tasks as needed. In larger establishments with more complex hierarchies, specialized bed warmers might be employed specifically for this purpose during the coldest months, their wages reflecting the seasonal nature of the demand for their services and the skill required to perform the work safely and effectively.
The equipment used in bed warming required regular maintenance to ensure both effectiveness and safety in an era when replacement of specialized tools was expensive and time-consuming. Warming pans needed periodic polishing with fine sand and oil to maintain their heat-conducting properties and prevent the development of rough spots that might catch on delicate fabrics or distribute heat unevenly. The wooden handles required occasional treatment with linseed oil or beeswax to prevent cracking and splitting that could make them unsafe to handle or less comfortable to grip during extended use. The hinges that allowed the pan to open for coal insertion needed regular attention with small amounts of oil to ensure smooth operation and prevent the accumulation of ash and debris that might interfere with proper closure. Safety considerations formed an important aspect of the bed warmer's training and daily practice, as the combination of glowing coals, combustible bedding materials and work in dimly lit spaces created multiple potential hazards. The risk of fire was ever present when working with glowing coals near linens, wool and straw mattresses that could ignite rapidly if exposed to excessive heat. Bed warmers learned to recognize the signs of overheated coals, understanding when to allow them to cool before use and how to extinguish them safely when the warming process was complete. They also developed techniques for quickly removing warming pans from bedding if any sign of scorching appeared, and knew the locations of water buckets and other firefighting equipment throughout the buildings where they worked. The timing of bed warming coordinated with other evening household activities created a complex choreography of domestic life that required careful planning and communication among staff members. The bed warmer needed to complete her work after the chambers had been cleaned and prepared by housemaids but before the occupants arrived to retire for the night. This required coordination with other household staff and awareness of the various schedules maintained by different household members and guests, some of whom might retire early while others preferred to spend long hours in conversation by the fireside. The quality of the warming achieved depended on numerous factors beyond the skill of the bed warmer herself, including environmental conditions and the physical characteristics of the sleeping chambers. The construction and materials of the bed affected how well heat was retained and distributed throughout the night hours. Beds with solid wooden frames and thick feather or straw mattresses held warmth longer than those with simpler construction or thinner padding. The quality and quantity of bedding also influenced the effectiveness of the warming process, with multiple layers of good wool providing better insulation than thin or warm coverings that allowed heat to escape rapidly into the cold air of the chamber. Weather conditions outside the building affected the bed warming routine in various ways that required adaptation and adjustment of standard procedures. On particularly cold nights when wind drove frost through gaps in windows and walls, the warming process might need to begin earlier to overcome the chill that permeated even interior rooms despite the presence of fireplaces. Windy conditions could create drafts that quickly dissipated the carefully created warmth, requiring the bed warmer to pay attention to shutters and curtains as part of her preparation routine, ensuring that all openings were properly sealed against the intrusion of cold air. The social expectations surrounding bed warming varied among different classes and types of establishments, reflecting broader patterns of service and hospitality in 18th century society. In wealthy private homes where maintaining appearances was paramount, the warming was expected to be completed invisibly, with no trace of the process remaining when the occupant entered the chamber for the night. The warming pan would be removed, coals properly disposed of, and any disturbance to the bedding smoothed away before the bed's occupant arrived. In coaching inns and public houses that served travelers of various social classes, guests might be more tolerant of the practical aspects of the service, understanding it as part of the accommodation they were purchasing and sometimes even expressing appreciation for the comfort provided. The development of bed warming techniques showed gradual refinement over the decades of the 18th century as practitioners shared knowledge and innovations spread through networks of domestic workers. Innovations in warming pan design, such as improved hinge mechanisms that closed more securely and better heat distribution patterns created by different arrangements of holes or ridges in the metal surfaces, reflected the accumulated experience of countless bed warmers and the craftsmen who made their tools. These improvements, though small in individual impact, contributed to the overall effectiveness and safety of the practice while making the work easier and more efficient for those who performed it nightly. The relationship between bed warmers and the other household staff involved various forms of cooperation and coordination that were essential for the smooth operation of domestic routines. Kitchen staff provided access to suitable coals from cooking fires and advised on the best types of fuel for different purposes. Housemaids ensured that chambers were properly prepared before the warming process began, with fresh linens arranged and any obstacles cleared from the bed warmer's path. Footmen or other male servants might assist with carrying coal supplies up narrow staircases, or maintaining the warming pan equipment when repairs were needed. This cooperation required clear communication and mutual understanding of each person's role in the evening routine. The seasonal rhythm of bed warming work created periods of intense activity alternating with times of reduced demand, following the natural cycle of temperature changes throughout the year. The onset of cold weather in autumn brought increasing requests for bed warming services as temperatures dropped and the comfort of a warm bed became more appealing. Demand reached peak intensity during the deepest winter months when even well-heated rooms remained uncomfortably cold during nighttime hours. As spring arrived and nighttime temperatures moderated, the frequency of bed warming gradually decreased, though the service might still be requested by elderly guests or those particularly sensitive to cold, or during unexpected late-season cold spells. The geographic variations in bed warming practices reflected local conditions and customs throughout different regions, as communities adapted the basic techniques to their particular circumstances and available resources. In areas with abundant forests, hardwood coals were readily available and preferred for their steady burning properties and pleasant smell when burned. Regions dependent on imported coal or limited local fuel sources might develop techniques adapted to the different burning characteristics of mineral coal, peat, or other alternative fuels. Coastal areas with limited fuel resources sometimes incorporated heated stones or bricks that could be warmed by fires and then wrapped in cloth to provide steady, long-lasting heat without the fire risk associated with glowing coals.
Why life as a medieval baker was way harder than you think. The medieval baker's day began in the darkness before dawn, when the streets lay empty and silent, except for the occasional watchman's call echoing between the narrow buildings. In the year 1347, as autumn mist clung to the cobblestones of market towns throughout England, the baker would rise from his straw-filled mattress, while the church bells had not yet rung for lauds, lighting a single tallow candle to guide his way through the cramped quarters above his shop. The bakehouse itself occupied the ground floor of his dwelling, its stone walls blackened by years of smoke and heat from the great oven that dominated one entire wall. This oven, built of clay bricks and reinforced with iron bands, required constant attention and understanding that came only through years of daily interaction with its temperamental nature. The baker would begin each morning by examining the coals from the previous evening's fire, determining whether sufficient heat remained in the thick walls to begin the day's baking, or whether fresh fuel would be needed to bring the chamber to proper temperature. The process of heating the oven followed rituals established through generations of bakers, each step critical to achieving the correct temperature for different types of bread. Bundles of dry wood, carefully stored in the lean-to shed behind the bakehouse, would be fed into the oven chamber through the narrow opening, the flames licking upward against the curved ceiling until the entire interior glowed with even heat. The baker learned to judge the oven's readiness by observing the color of the flames and the way they moved within the chamber, knowledge that could not be written down but only acquired through daily practice. While the oven heated, the baker would turn his attention to the preparation of dough, a process that had begun the previous evening with the mixing of flour, water, and the precious leaven that gave bread its rise and flavor. The leaven itself represented one of the baker's most closely guarded responsibilities, a living culture of wild yeasts and bacteria that required daily feeding and careful temperature control to maintain its strength and consistency. A baker's reputation often rested on the quality of his leaven, passed down from master to apprentice like a sacred trust. The flour used in medieval baking came from grain ground at the local mill, its quality varying dramatically depending on the harvest conditions, the skill of the miller, and the honesty of those who handled it between field and bakehouse. The baker would examine each sack of flour carefully, running the pale powder through his fingers, to assess its texture and checking for signs of contamination, moisture, or the presence of foreign matter that might affect the final product. Different grains produced different types of bread, from the coarse dark loaves made from rye and barley that fed the common people, to the fine white bread made from carefully sifted wheat flour that only the wealthy could afford. The measuring of ingredients followed precise customs that had been established by the Bakers' Guild, an organization that controlled every aspect of bread production from the quality of flour to the size and weight of finished loaves. Guild regulations specified exactly how much a loaf of bread should weigh, what ingredients could be used, and what prices could be charged, with severe penalties for bakers who attempted to cheat their customers or compromise the standards of their craft. The bakers' measuring implements, including wooden scoops, bronze scales and marked containers, were subject to regular inspection by guild officials who ensured their accuracy and prevented fraud. The mixing of dough required considerable physical strength and endurance, as the baker worked with his hands and wooden implements to combine flour, water, salt and leaven into a smooth elastic mass. The wooden trough where this mixing took place, carved from a single piece of oak and worn smooth by countless batches of dough, sat at a height that allowed the baker to apply his full body weight to the kneading process. The rhythm of kneading followed patterns established through years of practice, the baker's hands working the dough in steady repetitive motions that developed the gluten structure necessary for proper bread texture. The quality of water used in bread making affected the final product in ways that medieval bakers understood through experience rather than scientific knowledge. Water drawn from certain wells produced bread with better flavor and texture, while water from other sources might cause dough to behave unpredictably or produce loaves with unpleasant taste. The baker would often maintain relationships with specific water carriers who knew which sources produced the best results, paying premium prices for water that met his exacting standards. Salt, another essential ingredient, came from coastal areas or inland salt works, arriving at the bakehouse in coarse crystals that needed to be ground and measured carefully. Too little salt would produce bland bread that spoiled quickly, while too much would kill the leaven and create inedible results. The baker learned to judge salt content by taste, and by observing how the dough behaved during mixing and rising, adjusting quantities based on subtle changes in ingredient quality and environmental conditions. The timing of bread production followed the natural rhythms of fermentation, processes that could not be hurried or delayed without affecting the final product. Dough mixed in the early morning hours would rise slowly in the cool air of the bakehouse, requiring the baker to judge exactly when each batch had reached optimal development for shaping into loaves. This timing varied with the season, the strength of the leaven, and the temperature of the bakehouse, demanding constant attention and adjustment of schedules. The shaping of loaves involved techniques that identified each baker's work as surely as a signature, with traditional forms that had been passed down through generations of craftsmen. Round loaves, long loaves, braided breads, and specialty shapes for feast days each required specific skills and knowledge of how different forms would behave in the oven. The baker's wooden implements for shaping dough, including paddles, rollers, and forming boards, were crafted specifically for this purpose, and maintained with the same care given to any professional tool. The loading of shaped loaves into the heated oven required precise timing and considerable skill with the long wooden paddles used to place bread on the oven floor. The oven's heat was at its peak immediately after the fire had burned down and the coals had been raked out, with temperatures that would sear the outside of loaves while leaving the interior raw, if not managed properly. The baker learned to work quickly but carefully, sliding loaves into position, while the residual heat in the oven walls would gradually decrease to provide the long, gentle cooking necessary for proper bread development. Different types of bread required different oven temperatures and baking times, knowledge that the baker carried in his memory and judgment, rather than in written recipes. White bread made from fine wheat flour needed high initial heat to create a crisp crust, followed by moderate heat to cook the interior thoroughly. Coarse bread made from rye or barley could tolerate more variable temperatures but required longer baking times to ensure complete cooking throughout the dense crumb structure. The regulation of oven temperature during baking involved techniques that modern bakers would find impossibly crude yet remarkably effective. The baker would judge temperature by holding his hand near the oven opening, counting silently to determine how long he could tolerate the heat. He would observe the behavior of flour dusted on the oven floor, watching how quickly it browned or burned to assess whether conditions were suitable for different types of bread. The sound of bread baking, the smell of crust developing, and the color visible through the oven opening all provided information that guided his decisions about timing and temperature management. The guild system that governed medieval baking created both protections and restrictions that shaped every aspect of the baker's professional life. Guild membership required completion of a formal apprenticeship lasting 7 years, during which the young man learned not only the technical aspects of bread making, but also the business practices, guild regulations and social responsibilities that came with the profession. The apprentice lived in his master's household, working without wages in exchange for training, food and shelter. The progression from apprentice to journeyman to master baker involved demonstrating competence in all aspects of the craft, including the ability to manage an entire bakehouse operation independently. The journeyman stage allowed the baker to work for wages while gaining experience in different bakeries, learning regional variations in technique and building the reputation necessary for eventual establishment of his own business. Achieving master status required approval from existing guild members, and often involved substantial financial investment in equipment and premises. Guild regulations extended beyond technical standards to encompass moral and social expectations that reflected the medieval understanding of professional responsibility. Bakers were expected to maintain honest weights and measures, use only approved ingredients, charge fair prices, and conduct themselves with dignity appropriate to their position in the community. Violations of guild rules could result in fines, suspension from practice, or expulsion from the organization, effectively ending a baker's career. The relationship between bakers and their customers involved complex social dynamics that reflected the essential nature of bread in medieval society. Bread was not merely food but a symbol of prosperity, community, and divine providence, making the baker's role both economically and spiritually significant. Customers expected not only nutritious bread, but also consistency in quality, fair pricing, and availability even during times of grain shortage or economic hardship. The seasonal variations in baking created different challenges throughout the year, as grain quality, weather conditions and customer demand shifted with the changing months. Summer heat could affect fermentation timing and make working near the hot oven almost unbearable, while winter cold might slow rising times and require adjustments to heating schedules. Harvest time brought fresh grain with different baking characteristics, requiring the baker to adapt his techniques to new flour qualities and moisture content. The economic pressures faced by medieval bakers included not only the costs of raw materials and fuel but also the various taxes, fees and obligations imposed by guild membership, municipal authorities, and feudal lords. The price of grain fluctuated dramatically based on harvest conditions, political stability, and trade disruptions, forcing bakers to constantly adjust their operations to maintain profitability while meeting guild requirements for bread quality and pricing. The physical demands of baking took a considerable toll on the baker's body over the course of a career spent in daily contact with heavy dough, extreme heat, and long hours of standing work. The repetitive motions of kneading and shaping bread could cause joint problems and muscle strain, while constant exposure to flour dust affected breathing and overall health. Burns from contact with hot ovens, paddles and baked goods were common occupational hazards that had to be treated with simple remedies available in the medieval period. The social status of bakers within medieval communities reflected the essential nature of their work, while also acknowledging the manual labor involved in bread production. Bakers were generally respected as skilled craftsmen whose work was necessary for community survival, yet they were also subject to suspicion and regulation based on the potential for fraud in measuring and pricing their products. The guild system provided some protection for honest bakers while also creating mechanisms for controlling those who might be tempted to cheat their customers. The apprenticeship system that trained new bakers created relationships that often lasted throughout a craftsman's career, as former apprentices maintained connections with their masters and fellow guild members. These networks provided mutual support during difficult times, shared knowledge about new techniques or materials, and created the social fabric that held the guild system together. The training of apprentices also represented an investment in the future of the craft, ensuring that skills and knowledge would be passed on to succeeding generations. The equipment used in medieval baking, from ovens and mixing troughs to paddles and measuring implements, represented significant capital investment that had to be maintained and protected throughout the baker's career.
Ovens required periodic rebuilding as the clay bricks cracked and crumbled from repeated heating and cooling cycles. Wooden implements needed regular replacement as they wore out from constant use and exposure to moisture and flour. The baker's tools were often passed down from generation to generation, carrying with them the accumulated experience of years of daily use. The relationship between bakers and millers created dependencies that could significantly affect bread production, as the quality and availability of flour depended entirely on the miller's skill and honesty. Disputes between bakers and millers over flour quality, pricing or delivery schedules could disrupt bread production and strain relationships within the community. Some bakers attempted to maintain relationships with multiple millers to ensure consistent flour supply, while others developed exclusive arrangements that provided better quality control but greater vulnerability to supply disruptions. The storage and handling of flour required careful attention to prevent spoilage, contamination, and pest infestation that could destroy valuable raw materials and compromise bread quality. Flour had to be kept dry and protected from mice, rats, and insects that were attracted to stored grain products. The baker's storage areas needed to be cleaned regularly and maintained at proper temperature and humidity levels to preserve flour quality throughout the varying conditions of different seasons. The disposal of waste products from baking operations, including ash from ovens, spoiled dough, and damaged loaves, had to be managed in ways that did not create health hazards or violate municipal regulations about waste disposal. Ash from wood fires could be sold to soap makers or used as fertilizer, while spoiled bread might be fed to livestock or used as an ingredient in other food preparations. The baker had to balance the desire to minimize waste with the practical requirements of maintaining sanitary conditions in and around the bakehouse. The working relationship between master bakers and their apprentices involved not only technical training but also moral instruction and social development that prepared young men for eventual independence and guild membership. The master baker was expected to provide not only food and shelter but also guidance in proper conduct, business practices, and community responsibility. This relationship often extended beyond the formal apprenticeship period, with masters continuing to offer advice and support to their former apprentices throughout their careers. The coordination of baking schedules with community rhythms required understanding of local customs, religious observances, and seasonal celebrations that affected demand for different types of bread. Holy days might require special breads or increased production to meet higher demand, while harvest festivals could create opportunities for specialty products that commanded premium prices. The baker had to balance these special requirements with the daily need for regular bread production that sustained the community throughout the year. The maintenance of consistent quality in bread production required attention to countless small details that could affect the final product, from the purity of water used in mixing to the evenness of heat distribution in the oven. The baker developed sensitivity to subtle changes in ingredient behavior, environmental conditions, and equipment performance that allowed him to make adjustments before problems affected bread quality. This accumulated knowledge represented the true expertise that distinguished master bakers from less experienced practitioners. The financial management of a bakery operation involved careful balance between the costs of raw materials, fuel, labor, and equipment maintenance against the income generated by bread sales at prices regulated by guild and municipal authorities. The baker had to maintain detailed records of expenses and revenues while planning for seasonal variations in costs and demand. Success required not only technical skill in bread making but also business acumen in managing resources and maintaining profitability under the constraints of guild regulation and market competition.
The Secret Life of a Royal Laundry Worker in 1782. In the depths of Versailles, beneath the grand salons where courtiers danced and diplomats whispered, lay a network of service chambers that few outside the palace staff ever glimpsed. Among these was the Royal Laundry, a vast enterprise that operated with the precision of clockwork and the gravity of state ceremony. Here, in rooms lined with copper basins and wooden mangles, worked Marie Claire Dubois, a woman whose hands knew the weight of silk, and whose eyes could detect the faintest stain upon royal linen. Marie Claire had entered service at the palace in the spring of 1779, recommended by her aunt, who had served as an under-laundress for nearly 2 decades. The position required not merely skill with soap and water, but an understanding of court hierarchy that was as complex as any diplomatic protocol. Each piece of fabric that passed through her hands carried with it the weight of royal dignity, and the methods by which it was cleaned, pressed, and returned were governed by regulations as old as the monarchy itself. The day began before dawn, when the palace still slumbered beneath its ornate coverlets. Marie Claire would descend the narrow servants' staircase to the laundry chambers, her wooden sabots echoing softly against the stone steps. The first task was always the examination of the previous day's collection, garments and linens arranged according to their origin and urgency. The Queen's chemises occupied their own designated basket, lined with clean linen, and marked with a small copper tag bearing the royal arms. Beside them lay the King's small clothes, each piece carefully catalogued in the leather-bound register that Marie Claire maintained with meticulous detail. The soap used for royal garments was prepared according to a recipe that had been refined over generations of palace laundresses. Marseille soap formed the foundation, its pale yellow blocks grated into fine shavings using a wooden plane that had been seasoned specifically for this purpose. To this base were added measured quantities of pearl ash, obtained from the burning of beechwood, and carefully sifted to remove any impurities that might scratch delicate fabrics. The mixture was dissolved in water that had been drawn from the palace wells and allowed to settle overnight, ensuring that any sediment would sink to the bottom of the copper vessels. The temperature of the washing water required constant attention, maintained at a heat that would cleanse without damaging the fine weaves of silk and linen that comprised the royal wardrobe. Marie Claire would test each batch with her elbow, a technique passed down from her predecessors, feeling for that precise warmth that would activate the soap without causing the fibers to contract or the dyes to run. Too hot, and the delicate embroidery threads might pucker or fade. Too cool, and the oils from perfumes and powders would remain embedded in the weave, creating yellowish stains that would only worsen with time. Each garment underwent inspection before washing, a process that required both technical knowledge and an intimate understanding of court fashion. The Queen's morning gowns, with their intricate trim of Alençon lace, demanded different treatment than the simpler day dresses worn by the ladies-in-waiting. Marie Claire would examine each seam and gathered section, noting areas where powder had accumulated, or where wine might have splashed during evening entertainments. These observations were recorded in her daily log, written in the careful script she had learned from the convent school before entering service. The actual washing followed patterns established by generations of royal laundresses, each step performed with the ritualistic precision of a religious ceremony. The finest garments were washed individually, never mingled with items of lesser importance or different fabric composition. Marie Claire would immerse each piece slowly, allowing the fibers to absorb the soap solution gradually. Her hands moved in gentle circular motions, working the cleansing mixture through the fabric without the harsh rubbing that might damage delicate weaves or loosen decorative elements. Stains required specialized knowledge that Marie Claire had acquired through years of careful observation and experimentation. Wine stains were treated with a mixture of white wine and salt, applied immediately, and allowed to draw out the deeper pigments before the regular washing commenced. Candle wax was removed by placing the affected area between sheets of clean linen, and applying gentle heat with a warming iron, causing the wax to melt and transfer to the protective cloth. Powder stains, common on court garments, responded to careful brushing with soft bristles made from badger hair, followed by gentle dabbing with dampened linen cloths. The rinsing process involved multiple changes of clean water, each batch tested to ensure it contained no trace of soap or cleaning agents that might later attract dirt or cause discoloration. Marie Claire would lift each garment carefully from the washing basin, supporting its weight to prevent stretching or tearing. The water was changed between each piece, ensuring that no residue from one garment would transfer to another. This attention to detail was not merely perfectionism but necessity, as any staining or damage to royal clothing would reflect poorly not only on Marie Claire, but on the entire household staff. Drying royal garments required equal care and consideration. The laundry chambers contained specially designed drying rooms, equipped with adjustable wooden frames that could accommodate garments of various sizes and shapes. These frames were positioned to avoid direct sunlight, which might fade delicate dyes, while allowing sufficient air circulation to prevent the musty odors that could develop in damp conditions. Marie Claire would arrange each garment on its designated frame, smoothing wrinkles and ensuring that no part of the fabric folded upon itself in ways that might create permanent creases. The pressing and finishing of royal garments represented perhaps the most skilled aspect of Marie Claire's work. The irons used were of various sizes and weights, each heated to specific temperatures appropriate for different fabrics and garment components. The largest irons were used for the broad expanses of skirts and bodices, while smaller, more delicate instruments were reserved for intricate details like ruffles and pleated trim. Marie Claire would test each iron's temperature on scraps of similar fabric, ensuring that the heat would smooth wrinkles without scorching or leaving shine marks on the finished surface. The ironing process itself followed established patterns that Marie Claire had memorized through countless repetitions. She would begin with the largest, flattest surfaces, working systematically toward the more complex details. Each stroke of the iron was deliberate and controlled, applying pressure sufficient to smooth creases while avoiding the harsh pressing that might flatten delicate textures or crush decorative elements. The rhythm of this work was almost meditative, the gentle hiss of heated metal against damp fabric providing a steady counterpoint to the quiet bustle of the palace awakening above. Royal linens required their own specialized procedures, distinct from the treatment of clothing but equally important to the smooth functioning of court life. Bed sheets and pillowcases were washed in large wooden tubs, their generous dimensions allowing for the proper circulation of soap and water around the substantial yardage of fine Holland linen. These pieces were agitated by hand, Marie Claire and her assistants working in coordinated movements to lift and fold the heavy water-laden fabric. The physical demands of this work were considerable, requiring strength and endurance that Marie Claire had developed over her years of service. Table linens presented their own challenges, particularly the elaborate damask cloths used for state dinners and formal entertainments. These massive pieces, some measuring 12 feet in length, required special handling throughout the cleaning process. Wine stains were common, along with spots from candle wax and food preparation. Marie Claire had developed techniques for treating these stains while the linens remained damp, working carefully to lift discoloration without spreading it to unstained areas of the fabric. The folding and storage of cleaned linens followed protocols as detailed as those governing their washing. Each piece was folded according to traditional methods designed to minimize creasing while maximizing storage efficiency. Sheets were folded first in half lengthwise, then in quarters, with each fold pressed flat by hand to ensure crisp edges. Pillowcases were folded with their open ends tucked inside, preventing dust accumulation and maintaining their fresh appearance. Table linens were rolled around wooden cylinders, a method that prevented the deep creases that might mar their appearance when unfolded for use. The linen closets where these items were stored represented a marvel of organization that reflected the systematic nature of palace administration. Shelves were labeled according to their contents, with separate sections for different types of linens and varying qualities of fabric. The finest items, reserved for the most formal occasions, occupied the uppermost shelves, protected from dust and moisture by covers of clean cotton cloth. Lesser linens were arranged below, still maintained in perfect condition but designated for everyday use or service in less formal areas of the palace. Marie Claire's responsibilities extended beyond the actual washing and care of fabrics to include the maintenance of detailed records documenting every aspect of the laundry operation. Her ledger books contained entries for each item processed, noting its condition upon receipt, any special treatments applied, and its final disposition. These records served multiple purposes, allowing palace administrators to track the condition and location of valuable textiles while providing documentation for insurance and inventory purposes. The supplies required for the laundry operation were procured through the palace's complex purchasing system, involving negotiations with suppliers, quality inspections, and careful inventory management. Marie Claire was responsible for estimating the quantities of soap, starch, and other cleaning agents needed for each month's operations, submitting her requirements to the household steward for approval and purchase. This planning required considerable foresight, as shortages could disrupt the smooth functioning of court life, while excessive purchases represented wasteful expenditure of royal resources. Seasonal variations in laundry operations required adjustments to established procedures and schedules. Winter months brought challenges in drying heavy fabrics, necessitating the use of heated drying rooms and extended processing times. Summer heat could cause soaps to become rancid more quickly,
requiring more frequent preparation of fresh cleaning solutions. Spring and autumn presented opportunities for more intensive cleaning projects, including the washing of heavy draperies and seasonal wardrobe changes that involved processing hundreds of garments as court fashions shifted with the weather. The social hierarchy within the laundry staff reflected the broader structure of palace society, with clear distinctions between senior laundresses like Marie Claire and junior staff members who performed more basic tasks. New workers were assigned to simple duties like sorting and folding, gradually advancing to more skilled positions as they demonstrated competence and reliability. This progression was formalized through a system of advancement that recognized both technical skill and personal character, ensuring that those entrusted with the most valuable garments had proven their worthiness through years of faithful service. Training new laundresses involved months of careful instruction in the specialized techniques required for royal garments. Marie Claire would supervise novice workers as they learned to identify different fabric types, mix cleaning solutions, and operate the various tools and equipment used in the laundry. This training emphasized not only technical competence, but also the discretion required for work that brought staff into intimate contact with the personal belongings of royalty and nobility. The tools of Marie Claire's trade were carefully maintained and replaced according to established schedules. Washing paddles were inspected regularly for splinters or rough spots that might catch delicate fabrics. Soap graters were kept sharp and clean, ensuring smooth, even shavings that would dissolve properly in the washing solutions. Irons were seasoned periodically, with wax to maintain smooth sole plate surfaces that would glide easily over fabric without snagging or marking. Quality control represented a constant concern throughout the laundry operation, with multiple inspection points built into every process. Garments were examined before washing to identify potential problems, during processing to monitor progress, and after completion to ensure satisfactory results. Any item that failed to meet established standards was returned for additional treatment, regardless of the time and effort required to achieve acceptable quality. The coordination between the laundry and other palace departments required constant communication and careful scheduling. Marie Claire worked closely with the wardrobe keepers to ensure that garments were available when needed for specific court functions. This collaboration involved detailed planning for major events, where dozens of elaborate costumes might be required simultaneously, along with the table linens and decorative fabrics needed for formal dining and entertainment. Emergency situations occasionally disrupted normal laundry operations, requiring rapid response and creative problem solving. Spilled wine during important dinners might necessitate immediate treatment to prevent permanent staining. Sudden changes in court schedules could create urgent demands for clean garments outside the normal processing timeline. Marie Claire had developed contingency procedures for these situations, including arrangements with local laundresses who could provide additional capacity when palace facilities were overwhelmed. The economic aspects of laundry operations were carefully monitored by palace administrators, who tracked costs for supplies, labor, and facility maintenance. Marie Claire was expected to operate efficiently while maintaining the high standards demanded by royal service. This balance required constant attention to waste reduction, optimal use of materials, and scheduling that maximized productivity without compromising quality. Regional variations in cleaning techniques provided opportunities for innovation within the established framework of palace procedures. Marie Claire had learned methods from laundresses who had worked in other noble households, adapting techniques for removing specific types of stains or treating particular fabric problems. These innovations were carefully tested on less valuable items before being incorporated into standard procedures for royal garments. The physical demands of laundry work shaped every aspect of Marie Claire's daily routine, from the strengthening exercises she performed each morning to the careful attention she paid to maintaining her hands in conditions suitable for handling delicate fabrics. Years of lifting heavy water-soaked linens had developed considerable strength in her arms and shoulders, while the precise manipulations required for detailed work had given her fingers unusual dexterity and sensitivity to texture. Weather conditions significantly influenced laundry operations, with Marie Claire monitoring atmospheric humidity and temperature changes that might affect drying times or create problems with mold and mildew. Rainy periods required increased use of heated drying rooms, while excessively dry conditions might cause static electricity problems with silk garments. These variations required constant adjustment of procedures and careful planning to ensure consistent results regardless of external conditions. The storage and organization of cleaning supplies reflected the systematic approach that characterized all aspects of palace administration. Soaps were stored in cool, dry areas where they would maintain their quality over extended periods. Delicate ingredients like pearl ash were kept in sealed containers to prevent contamination by moisture or foreign matter. Specialized cleaning agents were labeled clearly and stored separately to prevent accidental mixing that might create dangerous chemical reactions. Marie Claire's expertise extended to the identification and treatment of fabric damage that occurred through normal wear or accidental mishaps. Small tears in delicate silk could be mended nearly invisibly using techniques she had learned from the palace seamstresses. Pulled threads in fine linens could be worked back into place with careful manipulation. Faded areas might be restored through selective bleaching or dyeing processes that required considerable skill and experience. The relationship between the laundry staff and other palace servants was governed by protocols that maintained appropriate social distinctions while ensuring necessary cooperation. Marie Claire worked regularly with chambermaids who collected soiled linens, valets who cared for gentlemen's clothing, and wardrobe keepers who managed the storage and distribution of clean garments. These interactions required diplomacy and tact, as personality conflicts or procedural disagreements could disrupt the smooth functioning of palace operations. Documentation requirements for royal laundry operations were extensive, reflecting the bureaucratic nature of palace administration. Marie Claire maintained separate logs for different types of items processed, recording dates, treatments applied, and final disposition of each piece. These records were reviewed regularly by supervisory staff and provided the basis for reports to higher palace officials who monitored the efficiency and cost-effectiveness of household operations. The gradual evolution of cleaning techniques and materials provided opportunities for improvement within the traditional framework of royal service. New soap formulations were tested carefully on sample fabrics before being approved for use on royal garments. Improved drying methods were evaluated for their effectiveness in reducing processing time while maintaining quality standards. These innovations were implemented slowly and carefully, ensuring that changes enhanced rather than compromised the established excellence of palace laundry operations. The intricate scheduling required to coordinate the cleaning of hundreds of garments and linens demanded careful planning and constant attention to competing priorities. Marie Claire maintained detailed charts showing when each type of item was due for cleaning, when special court functions would require particular garments, and when seasonal changes in wardrobe would create peaks in processing volume. This scheduling was complicated by the unpredictable nature of court life, where sudden changes in plans might require immediate access to freshly cleaned garments that had not been scheduled for processing. The apprenticeship system within the royal laundry provided a structured path for young women to enter palace service and advance through increasingly responsible positions. New apprentices typically began with simple tasks like sorting buttons removed from garments before washing, gradually progressing to more complex duties as they demonstrated reliability and skill. This system ensured a steady supply of trained workers while maintaining the high standards required for royal service. The chemical knowledge required for effective stain removal had been accumulated over generations of laundresses, with techniques passed down through careful observation and practice. Marie Claire knew that certain stains required immediate treatment while others could wait, that some cleaning agents worked better in warm water while others required cold, and that the order in which treatments were applied could determine success or failure. This knowledge was documented in recipe books that were closely guarded and shared only with trusted colleagues. The seasonal rituals of wardrobe management created predictable cycles in the laundry's workload, with spring cleaning involving the washing and storage of heavy winter garments, summer preparations requiring attention to lighter fabrics prone to perspiration stains, autumn demanding readiness for the return of formal court season, and winter focusing on the specialized care of fur-trimmed garments and heavy draperies. Each season brought its own particular challenges and required adjustments to standard procedures. The preservation of valuable textiles extended beyond simple cleaning to include treatments designed to prevent deterioration over time. Marie Claire applied lavender sachets to stored garments to repel moths, used cedar blocks to protect woolens from insect damage, and employed special folding techniques that minimized stress on fabric fibers. These preservation methods were particularly important for ceremonial garments that might be used only occasionally but needed to maintain their appearance over years or even decades. The coordination with palace gardeners provided access to plants and herbs that enhanced the laundry operations' effectiveness. Soapwork grown in the palace gardens provided a gentle cleaning agent for the most delicate fabrics, while rosemary and thyme added pleasant scents to cleaned linens. Nettle plants, when properly prepared, produced a solution that could restore the deep green color to faded silk ribbons and trim. The maintenance of the laundry facilities themselves required constant attention and periodic renovation to ensure optimal working conditions. Stone floors needed regular scrubbing to prevent the accumulation of soap residue and moisture damage. Wooden work surfaces required periodic treatment with linseed oil to prevent cracking and warping. Copper vessels needed regular polishing to prevent tarnish that might discolor fabrics, while iron implements required careful maintenance to prevent rust stains. The integration of new technologies and materials into traditional laundry practices occurred gradually and carefully, with extensive testing to ensure compatibility with existing procedures. New types of soap were evaluated for their effectiveness on different stain types and fabric compositions. Improved designs for drying racks and pressing equipment were tested for their ability to enhance efficiency without compromising quality. These innovations were typically introduced during slack periods when any problems could be addressed.
The surprisingly quiet job of a street lamp lighter, Thomas Whitmore, had walked the same cobblestone streets of London for nearly 18 years, his footsteps marking the rhythm of dusk and dawn across the city's expanding network of gas-lit thoroughfares. In the autumn of 1847, as the lamplighter for the Westminster district, he carried with him the weight of responsibility that extended far beyond the simple act of igniting wicks and adjusting flames. Each evening, as shadows lengthened across the narrow lanes and broad avenues of his assigned territory, Thomas would begin his methodical progression through a carefully planned route that encompassed 237 individual lamps, each requiring its own particular attention and care. The tools of his trade were few but essential, carried in a leather satchel that had been worn smooth by years of constant use. His lighting pole, constructed of seasoned ash wood and measuring exactly 8 feet in length, bore at its tip a brass mechanism that could be adjusted to accommodate the varying heights and designs of the lamp fixtures throughout his district. The pole's surface showed the marks of countless contacts with iron brackets and glass panes, each scratch and dent a testament to the thousands of lamps that had been lit and extinguished under his care. Within his satchel, Thomas carried the specialized implements required for the maintenance and operation of the gas lighting system. A small brass key, worn thin by repeated use, opened the gas valves that controlled the flow of fuel to each lamp. A collection of thin metal rods, each bent to a specific angle, allowed him to adjust the positioning of wicks and clear minor obstructions from the gas ports. Several small brushes, their bristles stained with soot and oil, served to clean the interior surfaces of lamp chimneys and remove the accumulation of debris that could impede proper combustion. The lamplighter's day began in the early afternoon, when Thomas would arrive at the gasworks facility to collect his daily allocation of lighting materials and receive any special instructions regarding repairs or adjustments to the lighting system. The gasworks, a complex of brick buildings and iron pipes that supplied fuel to the district's lamps, operated according to schedules that coordinated the production and distribution of gas with the timing of the evening lighting routine. Thomas would check the pressure gauges and flow meters that indicated the system's operational status, noting any variations that might affect the performance of individual lamps along his route. The preparation of his equipment required careful attention to detail, as any malfunction during the evening's work could leave entire street sections in darkness. Thomas would inspect his lighting pole for signs of wear or damage, particularly examining the brass fittings that connected the ignition mechanism to the wooden shaft. The leather washers that sealed the gas connections were checked for cracks or deterioration that might allow dangerous leaks. The wick material, a specially treated cotton fiber that provided reliable ignition, was cut to precise lengths and arranged in his satchel according to the order in which the lamps would be lit. Weather conditions significantly influenced the complexity of Thomas's evening routine, with rain, wind and fog creating challenges that required adaptation of standard lighting procedures. Wet conditions could extinguish newly lit flames if the lamp chimneys were not properly adjusted, while strong winds might blow out lights that had been burning successfully for hours. Fog presented particular difficulties, as the reduced visibility made it difficult to assess whether lamps were burning properly, and created safety hazards, as Thomas navigated unfamiliar obstacles along his familiar routes. The gas lighting system itself represented a technological marvel that had transformed the character of urban life, but its operation required constant attention to maintain the delicate balance between fuel supply and flame stability. Each lamp was equipped with a manually operated valve that controlled the flow of gas to the burner, allowing Thomas to adjust the flame size according to local conditions and requirements. The valves were manufactured to precise specifications, with threading that matched the gas supply connections and sealing surfaces that prevented dangerous leaks when properly maintained. Thomas's route through the Westminster district followed a carefully planned sequence that maximized efficiency, while ensuring that no lamp was left unattended for extended periods. He would begin at the northern boundary of his territory, working systematically southward through the residential streets before turning eastward along the commercial thoroughfares that required brighter illumination for evening business activities. The final portion of his route covered the government buildings and public spaces where reliable lighting was essential for security and civic functions. The timing of the lighting routine was coordinated with the natural cycle of daylight, beginning approximately 30 minutes before sunset to ensure that illumination was available as darkness fell. Thomas carried a pocket watch that had been regulated to match the standard time maintained by the gasworks, allowing him to coordinate his activities with the system-wide lighting schedule. The precision of this timing was essential, as premature lighting wasted expensive gas fuel while delayed lighting left streets dangerously dark during the transition from day to night. Each individual lamp presented its own particular characteristics and requirements, accumulated through years of observation and maintenance. Thomas knew which lamps tended to burn unevenly due to worn burner components, which ones required extra attention to prevent wind-induced extinguishing, and which locations were prone to vandalism or accidental damage. This knowledge was essential for efficient operation, allowing him to anticipate problems and carry the appropriate tools and materials for addressing common issues. The social aspects of Thomas's work brought him into regular contact with residents and business owners along his route, many of whom had come to depend on the reliable illumination that his efforts provided. Shopkeepers would time their evening preparations to coincide with the lighting of nearby lamps, while residents used the appearance of the lamplighter as a signal to begin their own evening routines. These interactions, though brief, created a network of informal relationships that enhanced the security and community character of the neighborhoods Thomas served. The maintenance of detailed records formed an important component of Thomas's responsibilities, with daily logs documenting the condition and performance of each lamp along his route. These records included notes about lamps that failed to light properly, those that consumed excessive quantities of gas, and any repairs or adjustments that were required. The information was compiled monthly and submitted to the gasworks administrators, who used it to schedule maintenance work and identify patterns that might indicate systematic problems with the lighting infrastructure. Safety considerations permeated every aspect of Thomas's work, from the handling of flammable materials to the navigation of poorly lit streets during the evening lighting routine. The gas used to fuel the lamps was highly combustible, requiring careful procedures for connecting and disconnecting supply lines, detecting and repairing leaks, and preventing the accumulation of gas in enclosed spaces. Thomas carried emergency equipment including a small fire extinguisher and first aid supplies along with written instructions for responding to gas-related accidents or emergencies. The economic efficiency of the gas lighting system depended on careful management of fuel consumption, with Thomas responsible for adjusting flame sizes to provide adequate illumination while minimizing waste. During periods of reduced activity, such as late evening hours or inclement weather, flames could be lowered to conserve gas without compromising safety. Conversely, special events or increased pedestrian traffic might require brighter illumination that justified higher fuel consumption. The seasonal variations in daylight hours required regular adjustments to Thomas's lighting schedule, with summer months demanding later lighting times and winter requiring earlier attention to the evening routine. These adjustments were coordinated system-wide to ensure consistent illumination across the city's various districts. The changing seasons also brought different maintenance challenges, with summer heat affecting gas pressure and winter cold creating problems with condensation and freezing in the distribution lines. The technical knowledge required for effective lamp maintenance had been accumulated through years of experience and formal training provided by the gasworks company. Thomas understood the principles of gas combustion, the effects of air pressure and humidity on flame characteristics, and the mechanical operation of the various valve and burner designs used throughout the lighting system. This knowledge was essential for diagnosing problems and implementing repairs that would restore proper operation without requiring expensive replacement of major components. The coordination between lamplighters working adjacent districts required communication and cooperation to ensure comprehensive coverage of the city's lighting needs. Thomas would occasionally encounter colleagues at the boundaries of his territory, sharing information about system problems or unusual conditions that might affect multiple districts. These interactions also provided opportunities for exchanging techniques and solutions that had proven effective in addressing common lighting challenges. The storage and transportation of lighting materials required careful organization to ensure that adequate supplies were available throughout the evening routine. Thomas would calculate his daily requirements based on the number of lamps to be lit, the expected weather conditions, and any special maintenance activities that were planned. The materials were packed in his satchel according to the sequence in which they would be used, minimizing the time required to locate specific items during the lighting process. The relationship between the gas lighting system and the broader urban infrastructure created interdependencies that affected Thomas's work in various ways. Construction activities could disrupt gas supply lines, requiring temporary adjustments to lighting schedules or alternative arrangements for illumination. Street cleaning and maintenance work needed to be coordinated with the lighting routine to ensure that lamps remained accessible and functional. The installation of new lamps or the modification of existing fixtures required careful integration with established lighting procedures. Quality control measures were built into every aspect of the lighting operation, with regular inspections and performance evaluations ensuring that standards were maintained consistently across the system. Thomas would conduct systematic checks of his equipment and supplies, testing the operation of valves and connections before beginning his evening route. Random inspections by supervisory personnel verified that lighting procedures were being followed correctly and that maintenance standards were being upheld. The environmental factors that influence gas lighting operations extended beyond simple weather conditions to include seasonal changes in atmospheric pressure, humidity levels that affected gas combustion, and air quality variations that could impact flame stability. Thomas learned to recognize the subtle signs that indicated when conditions were favorable for reliable lighting, and when extra precautions were necessary to ensure satisfactory performance. The documentation of unusual incidents or system failures provided valuable information for improving the reliability and safety of the gas lighting infrastructure. Thomas maintained detailed records of any accidents, equipment failures or service disruptions that occurred during his shifts, including information about the circumstances that contributed to the problems and the actions taken to address them. This information was analyzed by technical staff to identify opportunities for system improvements and preventive maintenance measures. The professional development opportunities available to experienced lamplighters included training in new technologies and techniques, advancement to supervisory positions, and specialized assignments involving the installation or maintenance of complex lighting systems. Thomas had attended several technical courses offered by the gasworks company, learning about advances in burner design, gas production methods,
and safety procedures that enhanced his effectiveness in his assigned role. The social responsibilities associated with street lighting extended beyond the simple provision of illumination to include contributions to public safety, commercial activity, and community life. Thomas took pride in the role his work played in making the streets safer for evening pedestrians, enabling businesses to remain open after dark, and supporting the social activities that were an important part of urban life. The reliable operation of the lighting system was essential for maintaining the character and vitality of the neighborhoods he served. The coordination of lighting operations with other municipal services required ongoing communication and cooperation to ensure that all aspects of urban infrastructure functioned effectively together. Thomas worked with police officers who patrolled the illuminated streets, fire department personnel who needed adequate lighting for emergency responses, and public works employees who maintained the roads and sidewalks where the lamps were installed. These relationships were essential for addressing problems quickly and maintaining the high service standards that residents expected. The budgetary considerations that governed gas lighting operations influenced many aspects of Thomas's daily work, from the quantities of materials he was allocated to the scheduling of maintenance activities and equipment replacements. He was expected to operate efficiently while maintaining quality standards, balancing the need for reliable illumination against the costs of fuel, materials and labor. This balance required constant attention to waste reduction and the optimal use of available resources. The technological evolution of gas lighting systems provided opportunities for improved efficiency and performance, but also required ongoing adaptation of established procedures and practices. Thomas had witnessed the introduction of new burner designs that provided brighter illumination with lower fuel consumption, improved valve mechanisms that offered better control over gas flow, and enhanced safety features that reduced the risk of accidents or system failures. These innovations were typically introduced gradually, with extensive testing to ensure compatibility with existing infrastructure. The training of new lamplighters involved extensive instruction in both the technical aspects of gas lighting and the practical skills required for efficient route management and equipment maintenance. Thomas had served as a mentor to several apprentice lamplighters, teaching them the subtleties of flame adjustment, the recognition of potential safety hazards, and the importance of maintaining detailed records. This training emphasized the development of judgment and problem-solving skills that were essential for independent operation in the field. The measurement and monitoring of system performance provided feedback that was used to optimize operations and identify opportunities for improvement. Thomas contributed to these efforts by maintaining accurate records of gas consumption, lighting times, and equipment performance that were compiled and analyzed by technical staff. The information was used to adjust operating procedures, schedule maintenance activities, and plan for system expansions or modifications. The integration of gas lighting with other urban technologies created synergies that enhanced the overall effectiveness of municipal services. The reliable illumination provided by the gas lamps supported the operation of telegraph systems, facilitated the movement of horse-drawn vehicles during evening hours, and enabled the extension of business and social activities into the night. Thomas's work was an essential component of this integrated urban infrastructure. The preservation of historical lighting fixtures and the documentation of traditional lighting practices provided valuable information for future generations of technical personnel and urban planners. Thomas participated in efforts to catalogue the various lamp designs and installation methods used throughout the district, contributing to a comprehensive record of the evolution of urban lighting technology. This documentation was useful for maintenance planning and for understanding the historical development of the city's infrastructure. The community relationships that developed through Thomas's daily contact with residents and business owners created informal networks of communication and cooperation that enhanced neighborhood security and quality of life. People would report problems with individual lamps, provide information about suspicious activities, and offer assistance during emergencies or unusual circumstances. These relationships were built through years of reliable service and personal attention to the needs of the community. The seasonal maintenance schedules that governed the gas lighting system required careful coordination of resources and personnel to ensure that all necessary work was completed without disrupting normal operations. Thomas participated in annual cleaning and inspection programs that involved detailed examination of every lamp and its associated equipment, replacement of worn components and testing of safety systems. This work was typically scheduled during periods of mild weather when lighting demands were reduced and working conditions were favorable. The economic impact of reliable street lighting extended throughout the urban economy, supporting evening commerce, reducing crime rates and enhancing property values in well-lit neighborhoods. Thomas understood that his work contributed to these broader economic benefits, and he took pride in maintaining the high standards that were necessary to support the city's continued growth and prosperity. The lighting system was an essential component of the infrastructure that made urban life possible and attractive. The technical innovations that continued to emerge in gas lighting technology provided opportunities for enhanced performance and reduced operating costs, but also required ongoing education and adaptation by operating personnel. Thomas regularly attended training sessions and technical meetings where new equipment and procedures were demonstrated and discussed. He was expected to stay current with developments in the field and to implement new techniques that would improve the effectiveness of his work. The documentation of best practices and standard operating procedures ensured that the knowledge and experience accumulated by veteran lamplighters like Thomas would be preserved and transmitted to future generations of workers. He contributed to the development of training manuals and procedural guides that codified the techniques and approaches that had proven most effective in maintaining reliable lighting operations. This documentation was essential for maintaining consistent performance standards across the entire lighting system. The coordination with emergency services required established procedures for responding to accidents, equipment failures and other incidents that might affect public safety or service reliability. Thomas carried emergency contact information and was trained in procedures for reporting problems and requesting assistance from appropriate authorities. These procedures were regularly tested and updated to ensure effective response to various types of emergencies. The environmental stewardship aspects of gas lighting operations included efforts to minimize waste, reduce emissions and prevent contamination of soil and water resources. Thomas followed procedures designed to prevent gas leaks, properly dispose of waste materials and minimize the environmental impact of lighting operations. These efforts were part of a broader commitment to responsible urban development and resource management. The professional recognition and career advancement opportunities available to experienced lamplighters provided incentives for maintaining high performance standards and developing specialized expertise. Thomas had received commendations for his safety record and service reliability, and he was being considered for promotion to a supervisory position that would involve training and oversight responsibilities. These opportunities reflected the importance of skilled personnel in maintaining the complex urban infrastructure that gas lighting represented. The intricate mapping of gas distribution networks required detailed knowledge of underground pipe layouts, pressure regulation systems and connection points that supplied fuel to individual lamps. Thomas had memorized the locations of key valves and junction boxes throughout his district, understanding how disruptions at various points might affect different sections of his lighting route. This knowledge proved invaluable during emergencies when rapid isolation of damaged sections was necessary to prevent service interruptions or safety hazards. The specialized tools used for gas lamp maintenance were crafted by skilled metal workers who understood the precise requirements of the lighting system. Thomas's collection included adjustment keys with specific dimensions that matched the valve mechanisms used in different lamp models, cleaning rods with customized tips designed to remove particular types of debris, and measuring devices that ensured proper gas flow rates. These tools were expensive and required careful maintenance to preserve their effectiveness over years of daily use. The chemistry of gas combustion presented challenges that required practical understanding of flame characteristics, air mixture ratios and fuel quality variations. Thomas could determine the optimal adjustment for each lamp based on factors such as wind exposure, burner design, and local air circulation patterns. This knowledge was gained through years of observation and experimentation, developing an intuitive sense of how different conditions would affect flame stability and brightness. The scheduling of maintenance activities required coordination with multiple departments and service providers to ensure that necessary work could be completed without disrupting normal lighting operations. Thomas worked with gas production personnel to schedule pressure testing of supply lines, with construction crews to coordinate street repairs that might affect lamp installations, and with suppliers to ensure adequate stocks of replacement parts and consumable materials. These coordination efforts were essential for maintaining reliable service while managing costs and resource allocation. The apprenticeship program for new lamplighters included extensive field training where experienced workers like Thomas would demonstrate proper techniques and share knowledge gained through years of practical experience. This training covered not only the technical aspects of lamp operation but also the customer service skills needed for positive interactions with residents and business owners. The program emphasized safety procedures and emergency response protocols that were essential for protecting both workers and the public. The standardization of equipment and procedures across the gas lighting system required careful attention to compatibility issues and the maintenance of consistent performance standards. Thomas worked with engineering personnel to evaluate new equipment designs and provide feedback on their suitability for field operations. His practical experience was valuable for identifying potential problems that might not be apparent during laboratory testing but could cause difficulties in actual service conditions. The record-keeping requirements for gas lighting operations involved multiple types of documentation, from daily logs of individual lamp performance to monthly summaries of fuel consumption and maintenance activities. Thomas maintained detailed records in weatherproof logbooks that could withstand the outdoor conditions encountered during his evening rounds. These records provided essential information for system optimization, cost control, and regulatory compliance reporting. The safety protocols governing gas lighting operations were developed through years of experience with various types of accidents and equipment failures. Thomas was trained in procedures for detecting gas leaks, evacuating affected areas, and coordinating with emergency response personnel. He carried specialized equipment for measuring gas concentrations and temporary sealing of damaged pipes, along with communications devices for reporting incidents to central dispatch facilities. The quality assurance program for gas lighting services included regular audits and performance evaluations that ensured consistent service delivery across all districts and shifts. Thomas participated in periodic assessments where his work methods and equipment condition were evaluated by supervisory personnel. These evaluations provided feedback for improvement and recognition of exceptional performance, while also identifying training needs and equipment upgrade requirements. The economic analysis of gas lighting operations involved detailed tracking of costs for fuel, labor, equipment, and maintenance activities. Thomas contributed to these analyses by providing accurate data on time requirements for various tasks, equipment wear rates, and the effectiveness of different maintenance procedures. This information was used to optimize operations and justify budget requests for system improvements and expansion projects. The technological research and development efforts in gas lighting included field testing of new equipment and procedures under actual operating conditions. Thomas participated in several pilot programs where prototype burners, improved valve designs, and enhanced safety equipment were evaluated for their potential adoption system-wide. His feedback was valuable for identifying design improvements and operational considerations that needed to be addressed before full implementation. The community engagement aspects of street lighting services involved regular communication with residents and business owners about service levels, planned maintenance activities, and opportunities for system improvements. Thomas served as a liaison between the gasworks company and the neighborhoods he served, collecting feedback about lighting adequacy and reporting concerns about safety or reliability issues. These interactions helped maintain positive relationships and identify opportunities for service enhancements. The environmental monitoring associated with gas lighting operations included regular testing of air quality, soil conditions, and water resources in areas where gas infrastructure was installed. Thomas participated in these monitoring activities by collecting samples and observing conditions that might indicate environmental problems. The information was used to ensure compliance with environmental regulations and to identify potential issues before they became serious problems. The historical documentation of gas lighting development provided valuable information for understanding the evolution of urban infrastructure and the social changes that accompanied the introduction of reliable street lighting. Thomas contributed to these efforts by participating in interviews with researchers and providing detailed information about traditional practices and procedures that were being replaced by newer technologies. This documentation helped preserve important knowledge about the development of modern urban systems.
The interdisciplinary coordination required for gas lighting operations involved collaboration with professionals from various fields, including engineers, chemists, economists, and social scientists. Thomas worked with these specialists to provide practical insights into the real-world operation of gas lighting systems and the challenges faced by workers in the field. This collaboration was essential for developing realistic policies and procedures that could be implemented effectively. The contingency planning for gas lighting operations included detailed procedures for responding to various types of emergencies and service disruptions. Thomas was trained in alternative lighting methods that could be deployed during extended outages, evacuation procedures for gas-related emergencies, and communication protocols for coordinating with other municipal services during crisis situations. These plans were regularly updated and tested to ensure their effectiveness when needed. The performance measurement systems used for gas lighting operations provided detailed information about service quality, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. Thomas contributed to these measurements by maintaining accurate records of service delivery times, equipment performance, and customer interactions. The information was used to identify trends, benchmark performance against standards, and develop improvement strategies for various aspects of the lighting service. The regulatory compliance requirements for gas lighting operations involved adherence to various local, regional, and national standards for safety, environmental protection, and service quality. Thomas was trained in these requirements and was responsible for ensuring that his work met all applicable standards. Regular inspections and audits verified compliance and identified areas where additional training or equipment improvements were needed. The workforce development programs for gas lighting personnel included ongoing training in new technologies, safety procedures, and customer service skills. Thomas participated in these programs, both as a student learning new techniques and as an instructor sharing his expertise with newer employees. The programs were designed to maintain high skill levels and ensure that all personnel could adapt to changing requirements and technologies in the field. The cost-benefit analysis of gas lighting operations provided information used for decision-making about system expansions, equipment upgrades, and service level modifications. Thomas contributed to these analyses by providing detailed information about the time and resource requirements for various maintenance and operation activities. This information was essential for making informed decisions about investments in the lighting infrastructure and for demonstrating the economic value of reliable street lighting services. The public health and safety benefits of reliable street lighting were documented through various studies and reports that quantified the reduction in accidents, crime, and other safety hazards associated with improved illumination. Thomas took pride in his contribution to these benefits and understood that his work played an important role in improving the quality of life for residents and visitors in the areas he served. The lighting system was recognized as an essential public service that supported the economic and social development of the urban community. The specialized knowledge accumulated through years of practical experience with gas lighting systems represented a valuable resource for the continued development and improvement of urban infrastructure. Thomas recognized the importance of documenting and sharing this knowledge to ensure that future generations of workers and planners could benefit from the lessons learned through decades of operation and maintenance. His contributions to training programs, technical documentation, and research projects helped preserve this knowledge for the benefit of the urban community. The daily routine of inspecting and maintaining gas lighting equipment had become second nature to Thomas, yet he never lost sight of the importance of attention to detail and consistent performance. Each lamp required individual consideration of its particular characteristics and operating conditions, and Thomas took pride in his ability to recognize subtle changes that might indicate developing problems. His work contributed to the reliable operation of an essential urban service that supported the safety, economic activity, and quality of life for thousands of residents and visitors in the Westminster district. The quiet satisfaction Thomas derived from his work came not from dramatic achievements or public recognition, but from the knowledge that his careful attention to detail and consistent performance contributed to the smooth functioning of urban life. As he completed his evening rounds, adjusting the final flames and checking the last connections, Thomas could see the results of his efforts in the steady glow of gas lamps that would burn through the night, providing light and safety for the city's inhabitants until dawn brought the natural illumination that would begin another cycle in the endless rhythm of urban life. Marie Claire's responsibilities extended beyond the actual washing and care of fabrics to include the maintenance of detailed records, documenting every aspect of the laundry operation. Her ledger books contained entries for each item processed, noting its condition upon receipt, any special treatments applied, and its final disposition. These records served multiple purposes, allowing palace administrators to track the condition and location of valuable textiles, while providing documentation for insurance and inventory purposes. The supplies required for the laundry operation were procured through the palace's complex purchasing system, involving negotiations with suppliers, quality inspections, and careful inventory management. Marie Claire was responsible for estimating the quantities of soap, starch, and other cleaning agents needed for each month's operations, submitting her requirements to the household steward for approval and purchase. This planning required considerable foresight, as shortages could disrupt the smooth functioning of court life, while excessive purchases represented wasteful expenditure of royal resources. Seasonal variations in laundry operations required adjustments to establish procedures and schedules. Winter months brought challenges in drying heavy fabrics, necessitating the use of heated drying rooms and extended processing times. Summer heat could cause soaps to become rancid more quickly, requiring more frequent preparation of fresh cleaning solutions. Spring and autumn presented opportunities for more intensive cleaning projects, including the washing of heavy draperies and seasonal wardrobe changes that involved processing hundreds of garments as court fashions shifted with the weather. The social hierarchy within the laundry staff reflected the broader structure of palace society, with clear distinctions between senior laundresses like Marie Claire and junior staff members who performed more basic tasks. New workers were assigned to simple duties like sorting and folding, gradually advancing to more skilled positions as they demonstrated competence and reliability. This progression was formalized through a system of advancement that recognized both technical skill and personal character, ensuring that those entrusted with the most valuable garments had proven their worthiness through years of faithful service. Training new laundresses involved months of careful instruction in the specialized techniques required for royal garments. Marie Claire would supervise novice workers as they learned to identify different fabric types, mix cleaning solutions, and operate the various tools and equipment used in the laundry. This training emphasized not only technical competence, but also the discretion required for work that brought staff into intimate contact with the personal belongings of royalty and nobility. The tools of Marie Claire's trade were carefully maintained and replaced according to established schedules. Washing paddles were inspected regularly for splinters or rough spots that might catch delicate fabrics. Soap graters were kept sharp and clean, ensuring smooth, even shavings that would dissolve properly in the washing solutions. Irons were seasoned periodically, with wax to maintain smooth sole plate surfaces that would glide easily over fabric without snagging or marking. Quality control represented a constant concern throughout the laundry operation, with multiple inspection points built into every process. Garments were examined before washing to identify potential problems, during processing to monitor progress, and after completion to ensure satisfactory results. Any item that failed to meet established standards was returned for additional treatment, regardless of the time and effort required to achieve acceptable quality. The coordination between the laundry and other palace departments required constant communication and careful scheduling. Marie Claire worked closely with the wardrobe keepers to ensure that garments were available when needed for specific court functions. This collaboration involved detailed planning for major events, where dozens of elaborate costumes might be required simultaneously, along with the table linens and decorative fabrics needed for formal dining and entertainment. Emergency situations occasionally disrupted normal laundry operations, requiring rapid response and creative problem solving. Spilled wine during important dinners might necessitate immediate treatment to prevent permanent staining. Sudden changes in court schedules could create urgent demands for clean garments outside the normal processing timeline. Marie Claire had developed contingency procedures for these situations, including arrangements with local laundresses who could provide additional capacity when palace facilities were overwhelmed. The economic aspects of laundry operations were carefully monitored by palace administrators, who tracked costs for supplies, labor, and facility maintenance. Marie Claire was expected to operate efficiently while maintaining the high standards demanded by royal service. This balance required constant attention to waste reduction, optimal use of materials, and scheduling that maximized productivity without compromising quality. Regional variations in cleaning techniques provided opportunities for innovation within the established framework of palace procedures. Marie Claire had learned methods from laundresses who had worked in other noble households, adapting techniques for removing specific types of stains or treating particular fabric problems. These innovations were carefully tested on less valuable items before being incorporated into standard procedures for royal garments. The physical demands of laundry work shaped every aspect of Marie Claire's daily routine, from the strengthening exercises she performed each morning to the careful attention she paid to maintaining her hands in conditions suitable for handling delicate fabrics. Years of lifting heavy, water-soaked linens had developed considerable strength in her arms and shoulders, while the precise manipulations required for detailed work had given her fingers unusual dexterity and sensitivity to texture. Weather conditions significantly influenced laundry operations, with Marie Claire monitoring atmospheric humidity and temperature changes that might affect drying times or create problems with mold and mildew. Rainy periods required increased use of heated drying rooms, while excessively dry conditions might cause static electricity problems with silk garments. These variations required constant adjustment of procedures and careful planning to ensure consistent results regardless of external conditions. The storage and organization of cleaning supplies reflected the systematic approach that characterized all aspects of palace administration. Soaps were stored in cool, dry areas where they would maintain their quality over extended periods. Delicate ingredients like pearl ash were kept in sealed containers to prevent contamination by moisture or foreign matter. Specialized cleaning agents were labeled clearly and stored separately to prevent accidental mixing that might create dangerous chemical reactions. Marie Claire's expertise extended to the identification and treatment of fabric damage that occurred through normal wear or accidental mishaps. Small tears in delicate silk could be mended nearly invisibly using techniques she had learned from the palace seamstresses. Pulled threads in fine linens could be worked back into place with careful manipulation. Faded areas might be restored through selective bleaching or dyeing processes that required considerable skill and experience. The relationship between the laundry staff and other palace servants was governed by protocols that maintained appropriate social distinctions while ensuring necessary cooperation. Marie Claire worked regularly with chambermaids who collected soiled linens, valets who cared for gentlemen's clothing, and wardrobe keepers who managed the storage and distribution of clean garments. These interactions required diplomacy and tact, as personality conflicts or procedural disagreements could disrupt the smooth functioning of palace operations. Documentation requirements for royal laundry operations were extensive, reflecting the bureaucratic nature of palace administration. Marie Claire maintained separate logs for different types of items processed, recording dates, treatments applied, and final disposition of each piece. These records were reviewed regularly by supervisory staff and provided the basis for reports to higher palace officials who monitored the efficiency and cost-effectiveness of household operations. The gradual evolution of cleaning techniques and materials provided opportunities for improvement within the traditional framework of royal service. New soap formulations were tested carefully on sample fabrics before being approved for use on royal garments. Improved drying methods were evaluated for their effectiveness in reducing processing time while maintaining quality standards. These innovations were implemented slowly and carefully,
ensuring that changes enhanced rather than compromised the established excellence of palace laundry operations. The intricate scheduling required to coordinate the cleaning of hundreds of garments and linens demanded careful planning and constant attention to competing priorities. Marie Claire maintained detailed charts showing when each type of item was due for cleaning, when special court functions would require particular garments, and when seasonal changes in wardrobe would create peaks in processing volume. This scheduling was complicated by the unpredictable nature of court life, where sudden changes in plans might require immediate access to freshly cleaned garments that had not been scheduled for processing. The apprenticeship system within the royal laundry provided a structured path for young women to enter palace service and advance through increasingly responsible positions. New apprentices typically began with simple tasks like sorting buttons removed from garments before washing, gradually progressing to more complex duties as they demonstrated reliability and skill. This system ensured a steady supply of trained workers while maintaining the high standards required for royal service. The chemical knowledge required for effective stain removal had been accumulated over generations of laundresses, with techniques passed down through careful observation and practice. Marie Claire knew that certain stains required immediate treatment while others could wait, that some cleaning agents worked better in warm water while others required cold, and that the order in which treatments were applied could determine success or failure. This knowledge was documented in recipe books that were closely guarded and shared only with trusted colleagues. The seasonal rituals of wardrobe management created predictable cycles in the laundry's workload, with spring cleaning involving the washing and storage of heavy winter garments, summer preparations requiring attention to lighter fabrics prone to perspiration stains, autumn demanding readiness for the return of formal court season, and winter focusing on the specialized care of fur-trimmed garments and heavy draperies. Each season brought its own particular challenges and required adjustments to standard procedures. The preservation of valuable textiles extended beyond simple cleaning to include treatments designed to prevent deterioration over time. Marie Claire applied lavender sachets to stored garments to repel moths, used cedar blocks to protect woolens from insect damage, and employed special folding techniques that minimized stress on fabric fibers. These preservation methods were particularly important for ceremonial garments that might be used only occasionally but needed to maintain their appearance over years or even decades. The coordination with palace gardeners provided access to plants and herbs that enhanced the laundry operations' effectiveness. Soapwork grown in the palace gardens provided a gentle cleaning agent for the most delicate fabrics, while rosemary and thyme added pleasant scents to cleaned linens. Nettle plants, when properly prepared, produced a solution that could restore the deep green color to faded silk ribbons and trim. The maintenance of the laundry facilities themselves required constant attention and periodic renovation to ensure optimal working conditions. Stone floors needed regular scrubbing to prevent the accumulation of soap residue and moisture damage. Wooden work surfaces required periodic treatment with linseed oil to prevent cracking and warping. Copper vessels needed regular polishing to prevent tarnish that might discolor fabrics, while iron implements required careful maintenance to prevent rust stains. The integration of new technologies and materials into traditional laundry practices occurred gradually and carefully, with extensive testing to ensure compatibility with existing procedures. New types of soap were evaluated for their effectiveness on different stain types and fabric compositions. Improved designs for drying racks and pressing equipment were tested for their ability to enhance efficiency without compromising quality. These innovations were typically introduced during slack periods when any problems could be addressed,